welcome back to the Old Fashioned on Purpose podcast. So one of the topics that we really explore, kind of the topic we explore in episode after episode in all these different avenues, is this question of how did we get where we are in our current society? And how can we maybe pull in some of the past, some of the wisdom from previous eras and weave that into what we're doing today? And so we often talk about that in the realms of food, farming, agriculture, parenting, how we move through life. But today we're taking it into a slightly different realm. And I'm actually really, really excited for this one because we haven't touched on it really, I don't think ever here on the podcast. And that is around the topic of homes and construction and building. And so I have the expert with me here today. I'm so excited to chat with Mr. Brent Hull. He is the owner and founder of Hull Millwork. He is passionate about beautiful architecture and the art of timeless building. So welcome, Brent. I'm so thrilled to have you with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So could you give us just a little bit of background in case someone listening isn't familiar with you and your work?
Okay. About 30 years ago, I went to a school for historic preservation in Boston called the North Bennett Street School, kind of an old world trade school. They have bookbinding, traditional furniture making, and a program called preservation carpentry, where we literally, those hand planes behind me, we literally learned to get them working again and learn to build with hand tools. In a preservation sense, understanding, how things were built 250 years ago versus how they're built today. And I came back to Texas. I'm from Texas. My wife's from Fort Worth. I was from Dallas. And we started this company in my brother's garage. And I do home building now and construction and restoration. And we do architectural millwork, trying to really, the theme that's infused my business is that idea of building new again, using old world methods, using the past to inform how we should build better today.
That's right up my alley. You're speaking my language. Again, I'm not necessarily in the home building world, but I'm in that world in food and gardening and so many others. So I love it. I guess I kind of want to start with a big picture question. And I know this is a really big question, so just maybe give us the bird's eye view, the condensed version. But, we've renovated a few homes and a few buildings in our area, nothing to the extent that you do. I love historic places. I love old buildings, much more than I love new ones. But one thing I'm just repeatedly struck by is how much architecture has changed, how much styles have changed over the years. And I wonder if you could kind of give us a map of when that really started to shift. And also, maybe this sounds bad, but when did we stop caring as a culture about the aesthetics as much? Because it feels like a lot of the previous eras were there was so much more pride and craftsmanship. And now it's just like, get it done, do it fast. And so when did that start to shift? That's a huge question.
It's funny. No, it's good. I'm oftentimes comparing building today to fast food, to fast fashion, right? To a lot of the things that are, microwave generation type of things. And there's a lot of similarities between how food is processed and how homes are processed. And so the quick answer, and it's not a quick answer, but it's the abbreviated answer, and I go to it in my book, Timeless House in an Instant Age, is that after the Great Depression, from late 1920s, and then going through the 30s, and then we entered World War II. There's about a 20-year period from 1926, 27, when the peak of the home building was in the 20s, Great Depression, and then end of World War II, which is 45. Guys are coming back in 46. About a 20-year period of time, there was a housing crisis, and the industry was looking. There are studies that were done. There's one called the American Housing Study that was done in the late 30s, early 40s, wondering how we could build houses like they build cars. Why can't houses be built, quick, fast, efficient, still very well built and beautiful, but why can't we build houses like cars? And in fact, that question still haunts the industry. That manufactured housing has turned into cheap housing, and they would love to. The industry would love to learn how to build faster, better. They haven't figured it out, and so essentially, what happens is that 20-year period of time changed home building, and you get out of World War II, and there's an incredible housing shortage, and there are if you go back and look at the papers and look at the things, the people were living in box cars, they were living in silos, they were living in barns, they were doubling up, and so no one had housing, and so a lot of the industry was trying to figure out housing, and one guy in particular, did it better than everybody else. That was William Levitt with the rise of Levittown. Now, if you're not familiar with Levittown is basically when the average house size was 12 to 1400 square feet in 1940 and 45. He was building houses that were 600 and 800 square feet, no basements, very small and efficient, but they sold like hotcakes. I mean, he basically taught our industry, our home building industry, how to build cheap and fast. And those lessons that he taught builders over a 20-year period from 1950 to 1970 led to the McMansion era in the 80s, when you have basically a McMansion is a track house with more moldings and granite countertops. It's
Yes.
it's a big, ugly, fast, cheap house. And builders, in the process, the designer got pushed out of the process. And so the builder controls design, and so you basically have a guy who cares a great deal about efficiency, or a girl, whatever you want to say, but the person in charge of design has basically taken design over here. I have a statement I repeat quite often, and this is the problem with home building, why houses are ugly today. And yes, I think houses are ugly today. There is no style. They're assembled from mismatched parts, and that the home builder thinks that because his houses sell, they're well designed, and the homeowner thinks that because someone built it, somebody must have designed it. And so the homeowner doesn't get it and assumes, oh, well, look, someone designed this. No, someone assembled it. Okay. And, the build relationship that happens with clients, they'll say, go pick your brick, go pick your windows, go pick your hardware. And the homeowner's left to go to the hardware store, and they look around and there's a wall of hardware. And how do you make a decision? Well, our budget says we can spend, $4 a piece on a knob, and they look on the wall, they don't know what to pick. And then they go, well, that one's $4. Okay, let's do that. They do the same thing with windows and brick and flooring. And all of a sudden you have a house that doesn't look like anything. There's no philosophy. There's no design ideal. And so our houses are ugly. So that's how long did I do that in? 5 minute,
that was
5 minute reason why houses are ugly today.
Yeah. I was scared to say houses are ugly because I'm like, maybe he's going to correct me, but I'm glad you said it, because I do think a lot of houses are ugly.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like almost they're offensive to just our inner sense of what is beautiful, what we know to be beautiful. The one thing that really bothers me, even more than anything, is when you go into certain parts of town, like the commercial buildings that were built during the 70s, they look like prisons, like they're square and they're concrete. And I'm like, was that supposed to be like modern and cutting edge at the time? Like what was the reasoning behind that? Was it completely just cost of materials?
Well, there's an interesting book called The Geography of Nowhere, which speaks to your comment. And his point is that you drive up to a strip mall today, and you could be in San Diego, you could be in New York, you could be in Dallas, you could be, anywhere in the country, because they all look the same. And so, if you study modernism and kind of why our buildings look like they are. There's a bunch of interesting kind of anecdotal reasons why, modernism took over as kind of the predominant style in America and in the world. Part of it was the rebuilding after World War II in Europe, and the need for building cheap and fast, and this that driving things. I mean, the European hinges that go into our cabinets today, and that have replaced real hardware and things like that we used to do, was a product, just a small piece of the product of the European let's build cheap and fast ideal. But then if you go into the 70s and 80s, the developers who began to develop downtowns, and they learned that modernism was cheaper to build than traditionalism, and so we became much more focused on cost than on beauty. The study that was done on American housing in the 30s or 40s, I've got that book somewhere, was fascinating study, because basically when they studied the home building industry in the 20s, they discovered that most home builders were small. They in size as a company. They built 1 to 4 houses a year. They were regionally localized, meaning they built in their own city. They didn't really go into multiple cities. And the biggest problem was that they crafted houses instead of building them in a production sense, which is a fascinating comment and it's the reason why, when I divide houses and divide, architecture, I say pre-1940, post-1940, because pre-1940 houses were typically crafted, typically have an architectural style. I mean, the ranch style of the 50s and 60s is really the last style of houses in America, right? We haven't invented a new style. So things are either modern or contemporary, or they are, these copies of English or European styles or colonial revival, and they're done very poorly. And so, it's a problem.
Yeah. I think it's so fascinating that it really started to kick off around that World War II mark, because that was so much in these other worlds that I dabble in, the food and the agriculture, everything shifted right then. It's just like every single time, World War II, or 1920s to World War II, it's like over and over and over again, just like our whole world changed so much.
No doubt.
So to play devil's advocate a little bit, because this is a question I get a lot with my lifestyle in the world I'm living in. People say to me frequently, well, that's nice, Jill, that you're living old fashioned or you love traditional things, but it's just not realistic in the real world that we live in now. It takes too long. It's not how we do things anymore. So I'm assuming people have said a version of that to you with your crafts. Brent, we like this idea of pretty old houses, but hand tools and traditional building, it just doesn't work in the real world anymore. What would your response be to that?
I mean, what I'm talking about and discussing are a ground shift in my industry, and I go to the International Building Show, which is our industry annual building show, and I don't like 90% of the products in there, because they are made to snap in place. They are made to everything looks the same. Everything is made to be installed faster. Everything is about this snap in place type of building, and I mean, I suspect the arguments that you and I both make to our industry and to our customers is the same argument that people made when we stopped writing letters and we stopped doing things, right? It's just, a handwritten letter is better, right, than a text. But, and so we are holding on to something that I think people admit is better, but may not be practical. And so I think we've become so conditioned in America to the Walmart, focus and the microwave, speed, you know, I mean, even for you and I, it's a, acknowledged convenience that makes life faster or better or more convenient, but it's not better. I mean, if you look at just our culture, and just, it used to be said that if you wanted honest citizens, right, you needed to build honest buildings. That if you wanted, integrity in your community, then your buildings had to be, have integrity. Uh, Winston Churchill said, "First we shape our buildings, then they shape us." Right, and so
Mm.
um, it matters, and people can say it doesn't, and I don't think people would argue that it doesn't matter, but the comment that I get, not it's not practical, but it's too expensive. And so, the what I talk about as far as traditional building methods and things like that, the throwback to me is, well, no one can afford that. And I'm usually, I say the same thing. This is where I use the food argument. Yeah, good food costs more than a Twinkie, but it's also, you'll live longer. And so, it's just, we are trying to steer the battleship and cause it to change around. And it's a cultural, tidal wave. It's hard to battle against, but it matters. It's important, and but I don't know how you get around it.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. I think for me, it's often, everyone wants to compare. And sometimes I think in my early days, I was apt to try to rationalize what I was doing. Like, well, I can make cheese almost as fast as you can drive to the store and buy it. And I can make bread almost as easily. And I'm like, no, I'm missing the point. It's not about the easy. It's not about trying to be the same. It's about sinking into the difference. Like you said, yeah, it is different. It is slower. That's why we love it. And it is better because of those things. And maybe I think I'm always trying to fit it into compartments, and you can't put them in the same compartment because they're not the same thing.
Well, I think that there was a book written. I can't remember her name, and there's a lot of dystopian books written, and about. I think there's a lot of people in our culture who recognize that this world is a lot of fakery, and that we our cars that we drive, and the speed of everything that we do, it could fall apart really quick. And what I think about in houses, and she wrote a book called Station 11. It was a National Book Award winner book, and she basically was describing that a disease had basically knocked us out. But I think it was before COVID when she wrote it. And so, and you think about what COVID did to us, how it just shut everything down. And so she writes that 80% of people are die, and kind of how do we live? Well, and it may be for literary purposes, that she has people living in McDonald's and these buildings. But the truth is, you can't live in those buildings. Okay, they require power in order to function, in order to have fresh air. The only houses that are going to work in a dystopian world are old houses that have functioning windows and doors, and that can move air and don't require the modern conveniences for us to survive. And so I don't find I think it's ironic and sad a little bit when people want to throw out or tear down an old house, and really that's the only way we're going to make it long term. And I'm on a thing called the Build Show with a lot of build science guys, and build science is the making the houses net zero and energy free. They require energy to function. They require that movement of air, otherwise they become a stale igloo environment. So anyway, what we're talking about, and the life we're describing, and the beauty and functionality, and sustainability. I mean, my buildings are so much more sustainable than the Apple Store buildings, right? And so they actually don't require that kind of technology in order to function. The Apple Store, people want to build the Apple Store because it looks really cool, but it's a terrible thing for our environment. So Anyway, it's just we're juggling all these, conflicting, ideals that are bad for us, and I think we're barking up the wrong tree. And I think the simplicity that we're talking about that people live with really has value. I think.
Yeah. I agree. Absolutely. So you mentioned sustainability a little bit. I wanted to touch on that. When we're talking about older construction or these older styles, are we looking at sustainability in terms of more that the materials are longer lasting, so you're not going to be, they're not going to be breaking and ending up in landfills or being torn down as quickly? Or is it the materials themselves are made in an unsustainable way, or maybe are bad for the environment? Or maybe is it both?
It's both. It's there. One of my complaints is that on the people put AZEK. I'm not familiar with the PVC moldings or the AZEKs or some of these other Trex decks and things like that. They're made of plastic. They're PVC based products, and so they are very well. They're long lasting. I'm going to say very long lasting. We haven't used them for long enough. They're long lasting materials. Concrete siding, the hardy siding and things like that. Those are products that have been invented because we've forgotten how to pitch a windowsill so that it doesn't hold water. And we are practicing, there's things that were done in the past. We've just come out with this thing called a 100-year window. And what was happening is we were putting production windows in jobs, Marvin Pella Colby windows in jobs, and they were high-end jobs. Our clients are wealthy clients. They and they were rotting out in 15, 17, 18 years, and literally falling out of the hole. And at the same time, our restoration business was restoring courthouses and depots and other things. And we had these windows that we were taking out of buildings and restoring them, putting back in, expecting them to last another 50 to 100 years. And then we're like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why can't we have new windows that last a long time? We know they did. And so we are building, our window to match historic standards. We're using good wood, and good wood is to your point, is huge. If you do life cycle costs of our windows versus a production window, it's multiples of X better as far as the redo. And so when you get into sustainability, right, the fact that you're putting a product in that won't need to be replaced every 10 or 15 years really adds up and really does make things sustainable, long lasting. It's better materials. It's building things so that they shed water, so that they don't rot themselves out. And so anyway, it's a lot of things like that. We've forgotten how to craft so that things last. And so we make these fake products so that things will last, but we're still building them poorly. So anyway.
Yes. My husband has been in the construction world for a long time, and I hear him say many of the things that you're saying, complaining about. Yeah, every time we start a new project, he's like, this was built so poorly. Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
So I'm interrupting this episode for just a second to give you a very important canning lid update because, well, people like you and me care about these things. Some of you may remember back in 2020 that I did a video that ended up going viral all about reusable canning lids. They were a great option for that season when you basically couldn't find metal lids in stores. It was a huge problem. There was a lot of drama about it. And this type of reusable lid worked pretty good. They had a slightly higher rate of failure, but they were a great option versus like just not canning at all. However, I recently heard from that company, and because of supply chain shortages, they've had to move over to disposable gaskets. And so because of that, I've been looking for a different option. Now, last fall, when I was at a homesteading conference, I met the owners of a brand new company, and they gave me some lids to try, but I was hesitant to tell you about them until I had a chance to put the lids to use and see how they really worked. However, 8 months in, I've been using these lids exclusively, and I am so impressed. The name of the company is 4 Jars, and basically they just kind of check all the boxes for me. These lids seal beautifully. They are heavy duty. You can purchase them in bulk for a discount. They have free shipping options, And they're a small family owned company that really cares about their product and their customers. So I am so happy to be using these lids now. And if you'd like to give them a try, you can head on over to theprairiehomestead.com/4jars. Use code PURPOSE10 to get a discount. And I'll drop all that info down in the show notes. So now back to our episode. So I'm thinking of the people listening to this episode. And, I know I have some listeners in very old houses, some listeners building houses, some listeners who are probably in tract homes, who are, maybe in a subdivision and an HOA, and they're trying to figure out how to live a more old fashioned life with what they got. So I'd love to kind of shift to that practical world to give them some ideas that they can take and run with. So I guess maybe my first question along those lines would be, if someone is shopping for a home right now or a property, which is tricky, I know, because the real estate market, all I hear from folks is it's, hard and tricky and outrageous, but right now, but maybe it'll change in the near future. But anyway, if they're trying to weigh, should they go with an older home and maybe help restore it or renovate it, or should they go for a new home? And I think the new one is attractive because, turnkey, you just walk in and get rolling. What would your advice be for them?
I wouldn't buy a house built after 1970. And so I live in a 1962 ranch house, and I think the ranch period is the last period of decent building with real products and real materials. If you knew how they were building tract houses, if you knew the sheathing and the other products that they're putting on those things, you wouldn't buy them. They are incredibly poorly built. And so, they are built to be disposable. And so I would never buy a house after 1970. I would, if I had, $500,000, $400,000 right now to go buy a house, I would go buy an old house. Why? Well, you actually get moldings, right? You get solid wood moldings in your house. You get solid wood floors. The off-gassing and some of the other materials, the MDF and the other things that they're going to use in a new house are bad for you, that you are not going to be, healthy. And so I understand I can do that because I know how to repair a door handle that's loose or whatever the thing is that's going to drive someone crazy. But I'm just telling you that new build is so bad, you don't want to live there. And so, and then I think people would say, well, I'm only going to be in it 3 to 5 years. Okay, well, that's fine. It's your money. I'm not sure it's going to hold its value, but I'm just, you asked the question. I'm buying an old house. Because I know the windows, I can get the windows to operate. I know I can get it to breathe. I'm going to have more windows. I'm going to have things that make sense. I'm going to have things that actually are driven by design philosophy and are beautiful. There's going to be a style that I can work towards. And so for all those reasons, quality of material, design, functionality, I'm buying an old house.
Yeah, same. Yep. I've often said if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd go buy old versus build new, just with how I'm wired. For someone who's looking at older homes, I think the fear is always, what if I get the one that, is the foundation ends up being bad, or like what are the deal breakers that they should be looking for? If that maybe they're not, as handy in construction as you are, maybe they're a little more limited in their skills and their budget. What would you say would be the things that would be like the big things to watch for so they don't get in over their head?
Well, foundation and roof, you got to manage water. Okay. And so if you're not managing water, you're going to have rot, you're going to have, decay, and, water is the enemy. Okay. And so if it has a bad foundation and or the roof isn't in good shape, then that's the big one. In Texas, in North Texas, I should say, we have expansive soils, which we have a lot of clay in our soil. So when it rains and it dries out, our soils move a lot. So foundation doesn't mean that there's some shifting. At least it doesn't mean that in our market. foundation would have to be detrimental, big cracks in your foundation wall, things like that, major heaves. Um, and so, that would be the first thing I'm looking for. I think that you are, you know, me personally, I would want a house that is as original as possible. Okay. I don't want an old house that someone's flipped, because it means they've probably taken out the original cabinets. They've changed the windows. They've done all the stupid things that they think are good decisions that I think take all the value out of that house. So I'm going to want a house that's really original, has the original hardware, has the original cabinets, has the original tile in the bathrooms, the floors are in good shape. And so, that's the second piece I'm looking for. And then, I suspect there is a beauty attraction piece here too that's going to be just so charming. It just draws you in. And when you love something, you end up taking care of it better than when you don't. And so those are the things I'm looking for.
Yeah. Good advice. So for those who are, they're in a home right now, they're not looking to buy. Maybe they're either renovating an older home. Maybe they have a house, like you said, that they have, someone has flipped. I know we have our home was built 1914, 1918, I think. But we bought it many years ago before we kind of developed our own awareness, and it had been redone. And it was a small stucco little prairie house to begin with. So I don't think there was loads of character, but the gentleman who had it before us absolutely removed any character that was there, and it was white sheetrock and Berber carpets and oak cabinets and just, the whole 9 yards. And so over the years, it's been a process of I'm trying to bring character back into the home. And I'm trying to imagine what it would have been like. And it's not a Victorian, it's not a craftsman, right? It's a stucco prairie house, but I'm trying to imagine what the house wants to be. And so I know there are many different styles, and you want to respect the style of the house, but could you give us some principles from this timeless construction that maybe we might not realize that is appealing to our eyes, that we do find beautiful, and how we can start to bring some of those feels and that sense back into our homes?
Well, I think the easy button is architectural salvage. I think that finding good architectural salvage can be transformational. The whether that be a mantle, whether that be a stair handrail, whether that be doors, whether that be hardware, we've done, and in a lot of our new houses that we're building, architectural salvage is a big part of what we're doing. We're taking, antique French mantles. We're taking, I think we did a Louisiana, Hayes Town, who was an architect, did in Louisiana. We actually went to an architectural salvage yard in Louisiana and bought cypress doors to put into their house and used antique hardware on this new house. And so architectural salvage is huge. I think that there is too a philosophy, a design philosophy that's part of any new house, any consulting I do. I'm talking to people about building a narrative, like why was this house built? When was this house built? Who built it? So that we can infuse those products into it, and so that it makes sense. I mean, if you think about the philosophy of building in the Victorian era, right, was almost McMansion-y, with good craftsmanship, right? And so it was showy, it was newfangled products, it was a lot of manufactured and industrial products, and so there was the bright colors, the ornamentation are all part of the story of that style of house. And the arts and crafts period, which followed it, is exact opposite, right? It was a rejection of that ornamentation, so it was simplicity, no fake ornamentation, any kind of brackets or anything need to be functional, and so you go inside, and the moldings were, stained oftentimes because you wanted the natural beauty of the wood to come through. They weren't, heavily. Moldings were flat and plain, and so you all of those parts and pieces that go into both of those styles. Like if you had a window pull on a Victorian house, it's going to be ornamented. All that the little piece of everything's going to be ornamented. The hinges were ornamented. Whereas you go to the arts and crafts, it's very plain and simple. So I would, to understand the history, the narrative, the philosophy of what your house is really important. To putting the right furniture in there, picking the right mantle, choosing the right moldings, the kitchen. We're helping people redo kitchens in historic houses. And if you go to the cabinet store today, you will not see an historic kitchen in there. And so you really have to look at the historic pattern books, look at the historic catalogs. And the very first book I bought to build my library is I went into an architectural salvage yard near us, Old Home Supply, and said, "Hey, Ralph, if I'm a carpenter in 1920, what book am I using to pick out moldings, pick out stairs? What would I have ordered from?" And he handed me this book, the Universal Design Book, 1927. And it had stairs and moldings and cabinets, and it showed you everything that was available at that time. That became our tool. Okay. And the first book I wrote, Historic Millwork, was a collection of catalogs from 1870, 1880 into 1940, helping people look at what would have been available, what would have been done at that time. So, long answer, architectural salvage, but then you're also using those design philosophies to help you pick the right hardware, pick the right moldings, make those decisions.
Yeah, that was great advice. I love the narrative piece, because I know early on in my journey with my house, I kept thinking, well, I want it to be old fashioned. And so I got really distracted on, is it Victorian? And I would bring a little piece in of that. And then I'd be like, is it more craftsman-y? And then I'd bring in that. And then I'd bring in more European. And I'm like, stop, like, it can't be all the things. I have to pick, like you said, pick a narrative and let the house, lead the way. And so that was, it feels like common sense, but I feel like it's often not common sense. That I think we get distracted, especially
I don't think many people do it. And in fact, when we built a Pennsylvania farmhouse and for some people, and we went to the point of, okay, it was a farmhouse. When was it built? Because if it was built in 1820, it's going to look very different than if it was built in 1890. All right, who built it? Did the farmer build it, or did he have fine masons that came in and helped him do things? So that told us the kind of stonework, the kind of what the windows looked like. That told us, how ornamented the woodwork was inside. That's and then we ended up having the garage was the original barn, so it was a big structure. Yeah, but we wanted it to look like an original barn, even though it was going to function as a garage. And then the first part of the house, was added onto, and the kitchen was a 1940s kitchen. And so what did that look like? And so when you walk through that house, it feels very much like you're in a different time and place. And it has that charm of being, you can almost, hear and understand the story of the original people that lived there, because you had, so many different elements going on there. Our ceiling in the kitchen was a beadboard ceiling, right? We didn't want sheetrock in there. In fact, we had very little sheetrock in that house. And so anyway, it was all those kind of things that narrative. And I would encourage your listeners to really chase down that narrative. Don't just say, it's an 1870s farmhouse. Okay, well, who built it? How far were you from, a major city? Was the farmer a craftsman at all? Was it a kit, right? Well, how did he do it? What did, that then ends up defining, did he have any money, right? What kind of materials go into your house? And you can really, begin to, create a fun story.
Yeah. It's brilliant. And I think so many of those pieces, I know for me, when I walk into a home that just has like nailed it, it's like, it's not even the obvious things. It's just those little pieces of how the molding and the doorknobs that it just gives you the feeling, and you don't even know why, but it just feels right. And I love it when that happens.
I love it when that happens. We call it layering. That I want someone who visits this house and it comes the fifth time and sees something new each time, right? Yes. You go, oh, I never noticed they did that, right? That you've tucked in these details so seamlessly, and subtly, but it works, and you appreciate it. But the fifth time you come back, you're like, I never noticed they did that. That's really fun. So yes. That's what I love.
Yes, me too. Do you have any advice for kitchens? Because that's the one that I see a lot of older homes struggle with. You know, when I look at pictures of kitchen from the era that my house was in, they were, is it called unfitted? Like they didn't have appliances, obviously, and there were no upper cabinets, and it was very much like movable workstations and benches. And I love the look of them, but then I feel very frustrated because I have a refrigerator and a dishwasher, and I'm like, how do I blend the new and the old? Do you have any advice for folks in the kitchen area?
Yeah, the reason why your kitchen in 1914 looks like that, or 1918, hang on. Sorry, I didn't mean to walk out of your screen there.
No worries.
The this book, if people can find it, the kitchen plan book, it's
Ooh.
it was 19, I think 20.
Okay.
It was um, it was a juried event that basically they have, you know, these kitchens and what they look like, and the whole idea of the kitchen in 1900 to about 1925, 1935 was that the kitchen was a workspace, and it had to be small because it had to be efficient. It had to be, you know, they do time studies of and the step studies of where people were walking and how they function in this kitchen. It was a they were saying it's as important as a workshop, right? That is that you have is very efficient. So that's the reason why kitchens and bungalows are oftentimes small. We oftentimes will bump into that, you know, that breakfast area that's often attached to it, and so and open it up so that it can, you know, grow into the family room or grow into more of a public space, and it's not cordoned off. Um, the most important thing to do is get the cabinets right. If
Mm-hmm.
you Because the cabinets will cover, let's just say in those original kitchens you didn't have any upper cabinets, right? And those original kitchens might have you know, Hoosier cabinet for baking bread and making things. They might have a freestanding grill, you know, oven stove range thing, and then they have one wall of cabinets, sink under a window, and maybe cabinets above, but definitely, that's a very typical kitchen. Even if you fill that kitchen with line it out with cabinets, if you can get the cabinets right, okay, then it can sell it. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to walk into a 1920s house and then all this charming things, the moldings and everything's right, and then you walk into the kitchen and you're at an IKEA store.
Yeah.
And so the getting the cabinets right is, you know, it's a flat panel. It's an inset cabinet door. It's not an overlay cabinet door. It's cabinets that go all the way to the ceiling. It's usually small cabinets at the top of the ceiling line. It's some kind of glass or divided light in some of the lower things, and it's a simple cabinet. But if you look at, you know, a molding catalog from the 1920s, and the reprints are available. Um, It'll tell you the door style. It'll tell you what the different pieces look like, and we have taken those historic kitchen spaces, you know, filled them up with cabinets. And when you get the cabinets right, you can put in all the original appliances. You can put in whatever sink you want. You can put in whatever countertop you want, because you've gotten most of it right. Those other things will fit in there, and I think they fit in very nicely.
Yeah. Okay, great advice. Yeah, I do totally see how the cabinets would be so crucial. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
just take up so much wall space that you you get those right, you've got 80% of your kitchen right, and so it gives you leeway to do other things.
Sure. Okay.
And then
Great. Great
if you
advice.
do like you know a wood countertop, then if you did the backsplash, if you did some of those other period things, it just, you know, makes it even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's been the balance for me, is because I use my kitchen a lot. I'm cooking a ton. So I'm like, some of the pieces that I love from the old photographs maybe aren't as functional, right? Like I've even toyed with the idea of putting my refrigerator downstairs because I just hate the look of the refrigerator. My husband's like, you're not going to want to go down up and down the stairs. Come on. But I'm like, but it's worth it. So, I have to balance the functionality. But like you said, I think if you get that 80% nailed, then you have a little more maybe
Yeah,
freedom.
and when I first started, it was so hard to find subway tile. You know, it
Hmm.
was so hard to find, you know, cross handle plumbing fixtures. those things are much easier to find now. And so, that are brand new, that look really good,
Yeah.
that I think you can get it right. The fact that you can cover dishwashers and kitchen and, refrigerator, freezers in panels, that you can panelize so many of those things. And there's companies like, I think, Elmira Stoves. They actually make new, old stoves and refrigerators. And so, um, yeah, there's a lot of better things that when I was first starting, it was really hard to get those things right.
Yeah. I have seen more pop in the market, which is promising. Yeah, for sure.
It is.
Just a fun question. What's your favorite of all the styles that you dabble in and and you're knowledgeable, and what's your favorite personally?
It's like an ice cream question. What's your favorite ice cream?
Yeah.
They're all good.
They're
Are
all
you
good.
kidding me? I'm probably most attracted to a Greek revival style. I think it's very American. I think it's simple. I think it's strong. I think that it's I think I'm attracted to that. I think it can be contemporary, it can be historic, and it can be it's very adaptable. So I think a good Greek revival, I think, is a great style. But I mean, I love it when the English revival styles are done well. I love a good colonial revival. So yeah, I like a lot of different styles.
Yeah, awesome. We actually have a old soda fountain that we own, and people always ask me, "What's the favorite milkshake?" I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me that. It depends on my mood. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing.
Yes. All right. As we're coming up on time here, please let us know how everyone can find you. I know you have the book. I know the book that you have several books, but the one that was really sticking out to me was Creating a Timeless Home in an Instant Age. Did I say that properly? The title?
Yeah, building an instant timeless house in an instant age.
Instant Age. Yeah,
And
that
that
one's so
may
good.
be easiest defined by emailing us, info@brenthull.com. We've got copies here if you can't get it. At one point, it was on Amazon for like $800. It was like, no,
goodness.
You can get it here.
Okay.
eBay, you can get them there too. If you just go to brenthull.com, you'll see all our stuff and our different companies, and all the stuff we're doing. I have a YouTube channel, Brent Hull, on YouTube. And I have a lot of old house stuff there, restoring windows, just fixing up old houses, how to think about old houses, how to repair things. And so there's things there that people can watch and figure stuff out.
Yes, I was poking around your YouTube channel, and it's got some amazing resources. So everyone go check out the YouTube, grab the book, check out the website. Brent, thank you so much for this. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Just was a pleasure to chat. So thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Jill, thanks so much. Pleasure being here.